Section 21(7), the Dred Scott decision. So this section is mainly about a slave named Dred Scott. Previously in this chapter, we've been talking about the slavery controversy all over the U.S. and in the Senate. Now we're going to move the slavery controversy to the Supreme Court. So who exactly was Dred Scott? I'm going to give you lots of information about Dred Scott. That's kind of background information to make it interesting. You do not need to write all of this down, but just so that you'll know who he is and some of the explanations behind him. He was a slave from Missouri who traveled with his master from Virginia to Alabama to Missouri. When his master died, he got a new master whose name was Dr. Emerson. And Dr. Emerson took him to Illinois for about 2.5 years and then to Wisconsin. When he was in Wisconsin, he met and married his wife, who was also a slave. When he was in Wisconsin, it was a free state under the Missouri Compromise because it was north of the 3630 line. Dr. Emerson was a relatively nice master. He was an army doctor who was transferred to the south, to Louisiana. And when he got there, he sent for Dred Scott and his wife. So Dred Scott and his wife, Dr. Emerson trusted them enough to let them travel all the way to Louisiana by themselves, and they did. They came where they were supposed to. They went where they were supposed to go. After Dr. Emerson died, Dred Scott tried to buy his freedom from Mrs. Emerson for $300, but she said no. So he decided to file a lawsuit to get his freedom based on the fact that he had lived in a free area for a long time. He actually could have petitioned for freedom while he was living in Illinois, which was a free state, but he didn't. No one knows why. It was probably because he didn't know that slaves in the North were free, or maybe he didn't realize that he had an option to go to court. So he goes to the Supreme Court. What was his argument? His argument was that his stay in Wisconsin, which was a free state, had made him a free man. The Supreme Court at that point had 9 justices. 5 of them were from the South and 4 of them were from the North. The Chief Justice was Chief Justice Taney. He was a Southerner who had once owned slaves, but he had freed them, so no one really knew exactly how he would feel about slavery when it got to the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Taney decided he wanted to settle the slavery issue for once and for all. So there were 4 big issues in the Dred Scott case. Issue number 1. As a slave, was Dred Scott a citizen who had the right to bring a case before a federal court? Number 2. Did his time in Wisconsin make him a free man? He was in a free state. Does that make him a free man? Number 3. Did Congress have the power to make any laws at all concerning slavery in the territories? And number 4. If they did have the power to make laws in the territories, what was the Missouri Compromise a constitutional use of that power? What did the Supreme Court decide? First, they decided that Dred Scott could not sue for his freedom in federal court because he was not a citizen. On that issue, the court was 5 in favor and 4 against. They also decided that he could not become a citizen and that no African American, whether they were slave or free, could be an American citizen. Number 2, they rejected Scott's argument that his stay in Wisconsin made him a free man. And the reason was they said that the Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional. The rationale behind that: slaves are property. Just like we said, they're just like a cow or a horse. They were considered property. Under the Fifth Amendment, property can't be taken from people without due process of law. Remember, we talked about that in Chapter 10. You have to have a proper court hearing. You can't just take property away from people under the Fifth Amendment. So when you banned slavery in a territory, they said that was the same as taking property from slaveholders who want to bring their slaves into that territory. And that is unconstitutional. They also said that Congress has a constitutional